We have joining us this afternoon Doug Starcke, an Emerald Isle businessman, a surfer who's involved in the surfing trade as well. David Taylor, a physician's assistant, has a master's in epidemiology, also a surfer. And I want to welcome both of them here for a few minutes. Doug, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. David, likewise, welcome. Thanks for your time as well.
Thank you so much. No problem.
Let me start with you, Doug, because you have initiated some concerns and actually apparently communications with the town of Emerald Isle. What had caught your attention about this prohibition of surfing here on Vogue Banks?
Well, Lockwood, I wanted to first and foremost thank you for the opportunity for letting us speak our voice as the local Carteret County surfing community. And, wanted to make it completely clear that myself and my family, we love the town of Emerald Isle. We're long-term residents here. We have a lot of lifelong friends that work for the town, be it in parks and recreation, police department, EMS, et cetera. So, it's not about necessarily the town. It's more about the future of surfing in our community.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is, we are concerned about the current overreach in local government, which is what we consider this mandate. But also, I have two children that are 5 and 2 years old. They've both been on surfboards. So like I grew up in this area surfing, they're going to grow up in this area surfing. And it's our desire to make sure that they're able to surf freely in the future and not, possibly fall under a mandate of further restrictions if we were to be quiet in this situation. And now this becomes the new benchmark of when the beaches can be shut down for surfing. We fast forward 5 years from now, it could be now we have surf zones, now we have time restrictions like they see in Wrightsville Beach and Myrtle Beach. That's our purpose.
Okay, so you see this as an opening salvo in greater restrictions. David, to you, David Taylor, a Carteret County native, by the way, and I mentioned a moment ago a physician's assistant, his area of interest as well, epidemiology, which we're hearing a lot about in relationship to, we say here at the talk station, Wuhan flu, or, if you will, COVID-19 coronavirus. David, what's your thoughts about this? Are you equally concerned about both Doug's long-term concerns about surfing, or is it primarily focused on just this particular issue of prohibitions? Because the argument has been presented that the towns are concerned that if there is an emergency issue, the emergency personnel will be distracted from their other jobs, having to go out and help swimmers and surfers. Now, they are quick to point out the surfers, as a rule, are not only safe, but quite often are the life savers for many swimmers who find themselves in distress. And since there are no swimmers, your observation about the topic of surfing prohibition.
Yeah, I do, and thank you again. I do share the same concerns that Doug shares as well. And actually, to see where surfing is going to go in our community, you really need to look back. I mean, we have a stellar reputation of a surfing culture with over 20 different East Coast champions, all the way back to Betty Marsh. We have multiple fundraising events such as the Buddy Pelletier Foundation, which has been a continual contest that has been family-oriented. We've got 3-4 generations of surfers still surfing together who are not only part of the surfing culture, but also a deep-rooted part of Carteret County's culture. One of my issues is that I believe that what we're doing is that we are practicing something that is what we call social distancing, which really should be physical distancing from an epidemiological standpoint instead of social distancing, and that we're looking at surfing as more of like a hobby when it actually is more of a culture. I would make it similar to those who are in CrossFit versus those who go to the gym for a workout. CrossFit groups become family, they become friends. I have friends now that are not able to do their CrossFit, but they go on Zoom and they can work out together, and it's a family kind of event. And surfing is just the same, except we prefer to be greater than 10 feet apart from each other. So from an epidemiological standpoint, the risks of us spreading any virulent infection is extremely low. And like you said before, there's multiple years, myself, avid local surfer that most everyone knows, Bill Roach as well, David Sledge, a handful of people have been awarded on multiple times for life-saving techniques through the summer. I think on average, most of my friends and I probably pull out at least 5, if not 10 people per summer along with CPR. And right now, it's not summer. It's cold.
Right.
And no one's swimming.
I mentioned 2 swimmers Saturday or Sunday during the Easter weekend were warned. They were actually told, of course, they shouldn't go swimming. They did go swimming. They were warned. Apparently, everything worked out smoothly after that point. But here's the issue, and I'm sympathetic to the concerns of the mayors. They are concerned about the potential of having to extend life-saving services to swimmers. Now, they acknowledged, quite frankly, that surfing, and as a matter of fact, one of the mayors, particularly Trace Cooper, expressed frustration and a little disappointment that the surfing industry had, or the surfing activity had been identified as being prohibited as well. I'm wondering if it were possible, and I think to your point, Doug, the greater concern of greater prohibitions, that this is, if you will, just a warning shot, or that there are going to be future opportunities to control surfing, which is of greater concern, and I appreciate that. But would it be possible, for example, if, and I hate to use this term as a registration, but we'll use it for a moment, that local surfers, to David's point, would be registered and be given, shall we say, I'll say permit, but given a thumbs up, you can go ahead and surf, but you've registered with the town. We know you're out there, you're surfing. We know who you are, that sort of thing. Doug, would that be a better, could that be a solution, a temporary solution anyhow?
Well, I think that could be a temporary solution, but again, you deal with more government control, let's call it. Registering for this, registering for that. And I'm going to jump in. I don't want to get ahead of myself and jump in and start talking about solutions, but I think dealing with more personal responsibility, as Vogue Banks has typically always been, a route that way would be more of a long-term solution. But before I get into that, I just want to take a step back and talk about the town and their comments about EMS calls and things of that nature. And from my research and the people that I've spoken with as long as I lived here, I've never known of an EMS call to rescue a surfer in distress.
Not a surfer, swimmer. I'm sorry.
Well, and I just want to mention surfer in distress because that's going to tie into my long-term vision. And the long-term vision, would be that when things open back up, have a board meeting and have commissioner, present a carve-out to the current ordinance, which lumps swimmers and surfers together, which clearly they should not be lumped together because one is freely swimming with no flotation device. The other one is tethered to a flotation device. So have an ordinance that divides those two. So now you can restrict access of the water to people with flotation devices or people without flotation devices. And then have the commissioners vote on it, because it's my understanding that with this current mandate, commissioners did not get a chance to vote. They may have voiced their opinion internally to the mayors and town managers, but there was no vote. Therefore, hence there was no real voice of the townspeople.
Doug Starcke with us, along with David Taylor. We're talking about the prohibition of surfing on Vogue Banks. David, what has been the response to the prohibition? Obviously, we're not seeing a lot of surfers out there, so they have pretty much accepted this constraint. But I'm wondering, is there a feeling that this, shall we say, this constraint may not last long? What are you hearing, David?
From multiple surfers. Now, I'm on the other end of the island. I'm Pineville Shores in Atlantic Beach, and I do go see Doug and those guys in Emerald Isle. But, most of us on this end, we don't have a lot of younger folks, so we have a lot of surfers that are actually right now essential personnel. We have nurses, physicians, physician assistants. We have construction workers, day laborers. And the thing is surfing, when it becomes a part of your lifestyle, isn't like just going to the gym. It is a mental, spiritual, physical reprieve that is actually much needed in our daily lives. We do not go for runs. This is not something we've been doing for 20 years.
You see that as basically the same concept as running. Doug, would you accept that as a good parallel?
100%, whether it's running, cycling, jogging. This is our outlet. We're watermen and waterwomen, and on days when there's surf, we surf. On days when it's flat, we're on paddle boards, exercising those muscles so that we're in shape, for days that there's surf. So I wholeheartedly agree.
David, I want to commend you for bringing that comparison up because, yeah, in many regards, I can see it's no different than a solo runner. Doug, I want to go back to the same question I just asked David. And David, by the way, very good comparison, the fact that you've got a lot of, and I know some of them, some of you guys, I'll use that description, who are surfers. These are not necessarily young surfers, but what about the status in Emerald Isle? Is there right now, because there have been very few instances apparently of efforts to break the prohibition, do you see this restraint lasting a long time in your opinion?
From my point of view and everybody that I speak with, we have to, while we may disagree with the town and with the county, we do have to honor what's in place. And, it's not going to be something that you sneak out and go surfing while there's double red flags right now because, eventually the sneaking's going to catch up to you. The idea is to have your voice heard by phone calls, emails, social media, et cetera. And if that doesn't work, those that are of us that are 18 and over need to address it at the ballot box in the next 2 election cycles.
David, you agree with Doug on that last comment about taking this up politically, if you will?
Yes, I think that's another thing that's important. Surfing has always gotten a stigma as a counterculture, but it's not. We're very much so voters. We're very much so people for the county, and that's what it's going to have to come down to.